Imagine if your favorite cologne turned you into a target for a 500-pound tiger. Zoos might look like peaceful family retreats, but behind the scenes, they are governed by a labyrinth of absolute madness and high-stakes biology. Today, we're exploring 50 of the most absurd, hilarious, and baffling rules from the world's leading zoos and aquariums. Welcome to the thin, bizarre line between a family vacation and a wildlife disaster. 1. In many modern zoos, zookeepers are strictly forbidden from wearing Calvin Klein's obsession for men because tigers and jaguars find the scent absolutely irresistible. It is not a joke. The civitone in the cologne triggers a primal mating response, turning a routine enclosure check into a very awkward high-stakes date. If you are planning on visiting the big cats, maybe skip the fancy spray unless you want a 500-pound admirer trying to rub against your glass with romantic intentions. 2. In many high-end zoos, there's a mandatory rule that every cheetah must have an emotional support dog. Cheetahs are notoriously high-strung, frequently suffering from social anxiety that prevents them from breeding or even relaxing. By pairing them with a calm Labrador, the cheetah learns to take its social cues from the dog. If the dog isn't panicked by the crowd, the cheetah decides everything is fine. It's essentially a professional friendship where the dog's only job is to be the chill friend for a nervous apex predator. 3. A specific rule at several Japanese zoos requires staff to conduct regular escape drills, where a human wears a giant goofy animal costume to simulate a breakout. While the public watches in total confusion, keepers practice cornering a person in a plushy rhino or zebra suit using nets and mock tranquilizer props. It looks like a low-budget mascot fight, but the seriousness is real. They even practice what to do if the animal gets aggressive or mauls a staff member. Honestly, would you have the heart to tackle a grown man dressed as a fuzzy, panicked zebra? 4. Most aquariums have a strict no tapping on the glass rule that isn't just about stress. It is because some fish can literally die from the shock of the vibration. But here is the kicker. At certain shark exhibits, the rule exists primarily to protect you. Vibrations can mimic the struggle of prey. And while the glass is incredibly thick, do you really want to be the reason a great white decides to test the structural integrity of its enclosure just to see if you taste like chicken? 5. At the San Diego Zoo, you cannot bring balloons inside under any circumstances. If one pops, it sounds like a gunshot to the animals, which sends creatures like giraffes into a life-threatening, stampeding panic. Worse, a deflated balloon looks exactly like a delicious jellyfish to a sea turtle or a gourmet snack to a goat. It is a one-way ticket to an emergency vet bill and a very sad day for everyone involved. 6. Many zoos have a no eye contact policy when walking past silverback gorilla enclosures. In the primate world, a lingering stare is not a sign of admiration. It is a direct challenge and an invitation to a fight you are guaranteed to lose. If a gorilla thinks you are challenging his authority, he might respond by launching something organic and smelly at your face. Why do humans think staring at a 200-kilogram beast is a good idea when most of us won't even make eye contact with a stranger on a crowded elevator? 7. The Chengdu research base of giant pandas has a fascinating internal rule regarding fake pregnancies. Pandas have figured out that when they act pregnant, they receive more bamboo, better air conditioning, and round-the-clock attention. They are essentially the world's most adorable con artists. Staff now have to run intensive blood tests to prove the panda isn't just lying for extra snacks. If you could get free gourmet meals just by pretending to be tired and bloated, wouldn't you do the exact same thing? 8. In several Australian zoos, visitors are prohibited from wearing clothing that mimics the patterns of local predators. If you show up in a full-body dingo print onesie, do not be surprised if the kangaroos decide to kickbox you into next Tuesday. The animals are not judging your questionable fashion sense. They are reacting to a perceived threat that has suddenly entered their territory. 9. In penguin colonies, keepers have to enforce a pebble market rule to prevent total social collapse during the nesting season. Male penguins are notorious for stealing the best rocks from their neighbors' nests to impress their mates. This criminal behavior can lead to violent brawls and abandoned eggs. To keep the peace, zookeepers often dump huge piles of extra stones into the enclosure so that every penguin has access to luxury housing materials without having to resort to a life of crime. It turns out that even in the bird world, the quickest way to lower the crime rate is to simply provide a better local economy. 10. Many aquariums forbid professional-grade cameras with massive external flashes because the sudden burst of light can temporarily blind sensitive deep-sea creatures. Imagine living your entire life in total darkness and then suddenly getting hit with a flashbang because someone wanted a high-res photo of your gills. Is a blurry Instagram post really worth traumatizing a creature that hasn't seen natural sunlight in a million years? 11. Most zoos have a zero-tolerance policy regarding feeding animals because it creates junk food junkies. If a mountain gorilla gets a taste for your leftover Cheetos, it will stop eating its nutritionally balanced vegetables and start begging like a college student on a budget. This leads to chronic obesity and metabolic issues. You might think one little cracker won't hurt, but when thousands of visitors think the same, the animal ends up on a dangerous health roller coaster. Honestly, if you could get free gourmet snacks just by looking cute, would you ever eat your greens again? 12. The ban on selfie sticks at aquariums is a high-priority safety regulation to prevent accidental fishing. When these metal poles inevitably fall into a shark tank or a penguin pool, the animals often mistake them for shiny, metallic snacks. Retrieving plastic and metal from a stingray's stomach is a surgical nightmare that no one wants to perform. Why is it that the desire for a perfect photo always seems to outweigh the basic common sense of not dangling garbage over a predator's head? 13. At certain wildlife parks, keepers have a strict no profanity rule around parrots. These birds are essentially feathered recording devices with no social filter and an incredible memory for vowels. If a staff member stubbed their toe and let out a string of curses, that parrot would spend the next 20 years screaming those same words at visiting families. There are actual cases of birds being moved to behind-the-scenes areas because they became too vulgar for public ears. It turns out parrots don't just want a cracker. Sometimes they want to tell you exactly what they think of your outfit in 4-letter words. 14. Many primate keepers follow a lips-together rule when interacting with chimpanzees or macaques. In the human world, a wide, toothy grin is a sign of friendship, but in the primate world, showing your teeth is a direct signal of extreme aggression or a fear grin used by subordinates. If you smile at a dominant male chimp, he might interpret it as a challenge to his throne and respond with a physical display that involves a lot of screaming and flying debris. It is a strange psychological hurdle to overcome, but keeping a poker face is the only way to stay on their good side. Why do we find it so hard to stop smiling even when a literal ape is threatening us? 15. There is a very specific dietary rule regarding the exact amount of pigments fed to flamingos to maintain their iconic pink color. Without beta-carotene and canthaxanthin, which they naturally get from brine shrimp, flamingos would eventually turn a dull, depressing shade of grayish-white. It's basically the animal kingdom's version of a forced, lifelong spray tan. If the zoo's nutritionist messes up the ratio, the entire flock ends up looking like they've been through a heavy bleach wash cycle. It's a lot of pressure when the entire public perception of a species depends on how many ground-up carrots you put in their mash. 16. At many top-tier zoos, there is a strict, randomized feeding rule that forbids keepers from feeding large predators at the same time every day. In the wild, a lion doesn't have a lunch break at noon, and providing a predictable schedule leads to stereotypic behavior like obsessive pacing. By keeping the timing a mystery, the animals stay mentally sharp and engaged with their environment. It's a brilliant way to mimic the unpredictability of nature, but it also means the lions are constantly eyeing the keepers, wondering if the next bucket of meat is 5 minutes or 5 hours away. 17. If you visit a nocturnal house, keepers use dim red lights and enforce a strict rule against using white phone flashes. Many animals, like fruit bats, cannot see red light, allowing humans to observe them without disrupting their biological clocks. Using a bright white light is the equivalent of someone walking into your dark bedroom at 3 in the morning and turning on a stadium floodlight. It causes immense stress and can ruin their breeding cycles for months. It's the difference between a happy bat and one that feels like it's in a permanent interrogation room. 18. If you see a hippopotamus lift its tail and start spinning it like a high-speed propeller, the unwritten rule is to back away immediately. This behavior, known as muck spreading, is how hippos mark their territory by defecating and using their tails to launch the results in a 360-degree radius of filth. In the wild, it warns rivals to stay away, but in a zoo, it usually just ruins the expensive clothes of whoever is standing too close. It's a literal scenario of the crap hitting the fan, and the zoo's warning signs are the only thing standing between you and a very smelly drive home. 19. There is a growing rule in primate centers against showing great apes their own reflection for long periods. While some primates recognize themselves, others perceive the reflection as a rival intruder that refuses to back down. This can lead to extreme anxiety and aggressive behavior as they try to drive the stranger away. It's a haunting reminder of how close their psychology is to ours. If you spent your whole life in a room and suddenly saw a version of yourself that never spoke, would you lose your mind or be happy to finally have a friend? 20. The absolute ban on drones over zoo property is one of the most strictly enforced rules today. Animals, especially giraffes and birds of prey, see drones as invasive predators or giant buzzing hornets. A hawk might try to attack the drone, leading to horrific injuries from the spinning blades, while a giraffe might bolt in a blind panic and break a leg. It's a high-tech nightmare for keepers. Why do people think their 4-minute aerial montage of a sleeping lion is worth risking the life of a multi-million-dollar animal? 21. At the Edinburgh Zoo, there is a rigid protocol regarding the official military rank of a king penguin named Sir Niels Olaf III, who is technically a brigadier in the Norwegian King's Guard. This isn't just a cute nickname. The bird actually inspects troops during their visits and has been knighted. The rule is simple. You must show the penguin the same military respect you would show a high-ranking human officer. Imagine being a decorated soldier and getting a performance review from a bird that eats raw herring for breakfast. 22. In many primate research centers and zoos, there is a strict rule against wearing white lab coats in view of the chimpanzees. To a chimp, the lab coat is a learned signal for medical procedures, injections, or capture. Seeing someone in white can trigger a massive, screaming panic that spreads through the entire colony in seconds. Keepers and veterinarians often wear colorful scrubs or regular street clothes to keep the atmosphere relaxed and avoid triggering past traumas. It's a haunting look at how these animals develop triggers from specific visual cues, proving that their memory for bad days is just as sharp as ours. 23. At Australian sanctuaries, there is a legal limit on how long a koala can be worked or held by tourists, often restricted to just 30 minutes a day per animal. Koalas sleep for up to 20 hours because their eucalyptus diet provides almost zero energy and is technically toxic. Being handled by sweaty tourists is incredibly taxing for them. If a sanctuary overworks a koala, they can lose their license immediately. It's a firm reminder that these fluffy icons aren't living teddy bears. They are metabolically fragile specialists who value their nap time significantly more than your vacation photos. 24. At giraffe feeding stations, there's a strict no-tug rule. A giraffe's tongue can be 20 inches long, prehensile, and strong enough to strip thorns off an acacia branch. If you try to play tug-of-war with a piece of lettuce, you aren't just losing your snack. You are risking a serious skin burn or a dislocated finger. Their tongues are essentially muscular, purple ropes covered in antiseptic slime, and they will always win the struggle for a treat. Have you ever considered that a creature with a neck that long probably has the leverage to ruin your afternoon without even trying? 25. Most wildlife parks have a no howling rule near the wolf enclosures. While it feels fun to channel your inner werewolf, you are actually causing a massive territorial crisis. Wolves howl to communicate location and defend borders. When a human mimics them, the pack often perceives it as a rival intruder challenging their authority. This leads to hours of agitated pacing and internal fighting as the wolves try to re-establish their hierarchy. If you knew your harmless woo-woo was triggering a gang war in the enclosure, would you still find it funny? 26. If you're standing in the splash zone at a sea lion show, the rule about protecting your electronics goes beyond just getting wet. The water in these tanks is often treated with specific salts and chemicals that are incredibly corrosive. A single splash can turn a $3,000 camera or a new smartphone into an expensive paperweight within hours. The zoo isn't liable for your tech, so when they say protect your gear, they are literally warning you about a salty, chemical-laden death for your devices. 27. Some African rhinos in protected reserves have their horns infused with a bright pink, permanent dye and a cocktail of nauseating chemicals. This is a desperate, effective rule designed to make the horn worthless to poachers and toxic if consumed by humans in traditional medicine. The dye is visible even when the horn is ground into powder, and it doesn't harm the rhino at all. It's a brilliant, if slightly surreal, way of using aesthetics to save a species from extinction by making the prize literally poisonous. 28. Elephant keepers follow a strict two-person rule whenever they are in a shared space with these giants. Even the most well-trained elephant can accidentally crush a human just by leaning over or stepping slightly to the side. Having a second person present ensures that someone is always watching the animal's body language for subtle shifts in mood or stance that the primary handler might miss. When you weigh 6 tons, even a friendly nudge can be fatal, making constant vigilance the most important safety rule on the property. 29. Many zoos now strictly forbid feeding bread to ducks or other birds on their ponds. Beyond the nutritional issues, leftover bread leads to an overgrowth of surface algae and a condition called angel wing, which permanently deforms a bird's wings and prevents them from flying. It also attracts rats and other pests that can carry diseases into the main animal enclosures. The rule exists because your well-intentioned crust of sourdough is essentially a biological disaster for the local ecosystem. Why do humans insist on feeding junk food to nature when we can barely manage our own diets? 30. At the end of every day, aquarium divers have a mandatory gear count rule to ensure not a single tool, glove, or scrub brush is left inside a tank. Large fish and sea turtles are incredibly curious and will try to eat almost anything that looks out of place. A forgotten plastic scraper can easily become a lethal intestinal blockage for a shark. The divers are so meticulous that they treat the bottom of a coral reef tank like a surgical operating room, because in the world of marine biology, a missing piece of equipment is a potential death sentence. 31. Do not let the viral videos fool you. Most aquariums have strict no-contact rules for sea otters because they are essentially the honey badgers of the ocean. They have incredibly sharp teeth designed to crush through the hardest shellfish, and to an otter, your finger looks a lot like a delicious crab claw. They are known for being surprisingly aggressive and territorial, especially during mating season. The rule is there to remind you that just because something looks like a plush toy doesn't mean it won't try to dismantle you for stepping into its space. 32. You might think a laser pointer is just a fun way to play with your house cat, but using one at a lion or tiger exhibit is a major violation that will get you escorted out. Big cats have the exact same predatory drive as your tabby, but when a 300-pound Siberian tiger hits the reinforced glass at 40 miles per hour, chasing a red dot, it causes massive stress and potential injury to the animal. It's not a game. It's a high-speed collision waiting to happen. Why do people insist on treating a lethal apex predator like a bored kitten in a living room? 33. In venomous snake houses, there is an absolute double lock and double check rule that requires 2 keepers to be present for even the simplest tasks, like changing a water bowl. One person manages the snake with a hook or a shield, while the other performs the maintenance. This isn't just for safety, it's because many of these snakes, like the black mamba, are incredibly fast and intelligent. A single distraction could mean a lethal bite before anyone even realizes the enclosure door was slightly ajar. It's a high-stakes dance where a single mistake is effectively a death sentence. 34. Many polar bear exhibits have a strict rule about no strong food smells near the viewing glass. Polar bears have a sense of smell that can detect a seal through 3 feet of ice from miles away. If you're standing there with a pungent tuna sandwich or a greasy bag of fast food, the bear isn't looking at you because you're interesting. It's hunting the scent in your pocket. This causes the bear to become frustrated and aggressive when it can't reach the source of the smell. Is your midday snack really worth making a 2,000-pound carnivore consider you a walking appetizer? 35. There is a surprising rule in aquariums regarding the use of Windex or other household glass cleaners. They are strictly forbidden. Most tanks are made of high-grade acrylic, which is easily scratched and clouded by the ammonia in standard cleaners. More importantly, those chemical fumes can easily dissolve into the water of open-top tanks, poisoning the delicate pH balance for the fish. Keepers use specialized polished cloths and plain water or vinegar-based solutions instead. It turns out that keeping the invisible barrier clean is a science in itself, requiring more care than most people give their own wedding photos. 36. At several baboon and macaque enclosures, visitors are strongly advised to remove their sunglasses or tuck them away. These primates are notorious for 2 things: being obsessed with shiny objects and viewing a direct gaze as a challenge. Sunglasses create a mirror effect where the monkey sees its own aggressive reflection. Or worse, it just decides your expensive Ray-Bans are its new favorite toy. Once a baboon has your glasses, they aren't coming back in one piece. Do you really want to explain to your insurance company that a monkey is currently wearing and chewing on your $300 shades? 37. Biosecurity. Footbaths are a mandatory rule for anyone entering bird aviaries or hoofstock enclosures behind the scenes. You have to step into a shallow tray of disinfectant to kill any pathogens hiding on the soles of your shoes. This prevents the spread of devastating diseases like avian flu or foot and mouth disease, which can wipe out an entire zoo population in days. It's a simple rule, but it highlights the fact that the most dangerous thing a human brings into a zoo isn't their bad attitude. It's the invisible bacteria hitching a ride on their sneakers. 38. Most zoos have a no feeding the pests rule, which refers to the local squirrels, pigeons, and seagulls that hang around the park. While they aren't part of the official collection, feeding them creates a massive health hazard. These guest animals carry parasites and diseases that can jump to the exotic residents. Furthermore, it encourages them to steal food directly from the animals' enclosures, leading to fights and injuries. If you feed a squirrel a fry, you aren't being a Disney princess. You're essentially inviting a plague-carrying squatter to a 5-star resort. 39. In certain tropical bird aviaries, visitors are discouraged from wearing bright red or neon orange clothing. Some species of hummingbirds and honeyeaters are extremely territorial over high-energy food sources, which in nature are usually bright red flowers. If you show up looking like a giant hibiscus, you might find yourself being dive-bombed by a tiny, feathered fighter jet that thinks you're a rival food source or a very large, confusing plant. It's a rare example of a rule where the animal isn't the one in danger. You are, specifically from a very confused, very fast bird. 40. Shark feeding is governed by the pole and target rule, where each shark is trained to recognize a specific colored shape on the end of a stick. This ensures that every shark gets exactly the right amount of food and medication without a chaotic feeding frenzy breaking out. It also keeps the keeper's hands far away from the water's surface, preventing accidental test bites from sharks that might mistake a finger for a piece of mackerel. It's a sophisticated system of Pavlovian conditioning that proves sharks are much smarter and more trainable than the mindless eating machines the movies portray. 41. At several tropical aquariums, divers are strictly forbidden from wearing any shiny jewelry, especially wedding rings or necklaces, when entering tanks containing barracudas or large mackerel. These predatory fish are hardwired by evolution to strike at anything that flashes like the scales of a wounded baitfish. To a barracuda, your expensive gold band isn't a symbol of eternal love. It's a high-speed dinner bell. If you don't want to lose a finger in a lightning-fast misunderstanding, the rule is absolute. The jewelry stays in the locker. Is a bit of personal sparkle really worth a permanent souvenir in the form of a missing digit? 42. Many world-class zoos enforce a specific color code for staff uniforms to avoid agitating territorial species during routine maintenance. For instance, bright red or neon colors are often banned around certain bulls, rhinos, or large primates because they can trigger a defensive, aggressive response. Instead, keepers wear muted greens, tans, and khakis to blend into the background as much as possible. This rule helps maintain the psychological illusion that the humans are just a neutral, non-threatening part of the landscape. It's a subtle trick that keeps the animals calm and the keepers out of the path of a charging animal. 43. There is a mandatory no-touch rule for sloths when they are on the ground, which only happens once a week for their legendary bathroom break. Sloths are perfectly adapted for life in the canopy, but on the forest floor they are practically helpless, moving at a snail's pace and unable to defend themselves. Being approached by a human during this time causes them immense stress and can even lead to digestive shutdown. The rule protects their dignity and their health during their most vulnerable moment. It makes you realize that even the slowest creature on Earth deserves a little bit of privacy when nature finally calls. 44. Seahorses have a no-flash photography rule that is even stricter than other exhibits because their eyes are incredibly sensitive and they lack eyelids. A single bright flash can leave them disoriented for hours, preventing them from feeding or clinging to seagrass with their tails. Because they are so small and have such high metabolic rates, this level of stress can actually be fatal. If you cannot get the shot in natural light, just enjoy the moment. Your social media followers will survive without one grainy, overexposed photo of a tiny fish that just wants to live a quiet life without being blinded. 45. Octopus exhibits have more security protocols than most high-level prisons because these 8-armed geniuses are the Houdinis of the sea. There is a strict rule that every tank lid must be weighted down or bolted, and the edges are often lined with astroturf. Why? Because octopuses hate the texture of fake grass and won't crawl over it. One legendary octopus in New Zealand managed to escape his tank, slide across the floor, find a drain pipe, and navigate 50 meters back to the ocean. If an invertebrate can plan a prison break that sophisticated, do you really think your home Wi-Fi password is safe? 46. At major zoos, there is a very specific rule regarding the weight and age of children allowed near giant tortoises to prevent shell damage. These ancient reptiles can live for over 150 years, and while they look like slow-moving rocks, their shells are living, growing tissue with actual nerve endings. A heavy weight can cause them significant discomfort or even crack the structure. Treat them with respect. They've likely been on this planet longer than your great-grandparents, and they deserve a retirement free from being used as a living footstool for a hyperactive toddler who doesn't understand biology. 47. Crocodilian enclosures often have a low vibration rule during the sensitive egg-laying season. Mother gators and crocodiles are incredibly sensitive to ground vibrations and can become hyper-aggressive if they feel a potential threat approaching their nest. This means no heavy machinery, no loud construction, and sometimes even restricted foot traffic on nearby paths. A stressed mother gator is a force of nature that can turn a peaceful zoo morning into a scene from a prehistoric horror movie in a heartbeat. Does the thought of an angry 12-foot reptile protecting her nest make you want to walk a little softer? 48. There is a mandatory no personal toys rule for dolphin and whale tanks to prevent dangerous ingestion accidents. While dolphins love to play, they can easily shred a standard dog toy or a cheap plastic ball and swallow the pieces, leading to fatal internal blockages. Every toy used for enrichment must be made of surgical-grade rubber and be meticulously documented in a logbook. If a toy isn't on the approved safety list, it never touches the water. It's about ensuring that a moment of fun doesn't end in an emergency surgery that costs more than a luxury car and puts the animal's life at risk. 49. Transporting a whale shark involves a rulebook thicker than a dictionary because they are ram ventilators, meaning they must keep moving to breathe. Moving them requires a massive, specially designed oxygenated tank with an internal propulsion system to keep water flowing over their gills constantly. If the truck breaks down or the pump stops for even a few minutes, the world's largest fish could suffocate in its own tank. It is a logistical operation that rivals a major military deployment, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars just to ensure the animal can breathe while on the highway. Alright, we've covered 49 rules, and there is only one left. But before we reveal number 50, it's time for the final verdict. In our opinion, the award for the most incredible rule goes to the Cheetah Emotional Support Dog policy. It's the perfect blend of high-level behavioral science and wholesome friendship. It turns a deadly, high-strung predator into a relatable character who just needs a buddy to tell them everything is okay. Do you agree with our verdict? Or was there another rule that truly blew your mind? Let us know in the comments below. And now, for our final, most serious number on the list. 50. If you are visiting a vulture exhibit, the unwritten rule is to never corner the bird or make it feel trapped, because their primary defense mechanism is projectile vomiting. Vultures can launch a stream of highly acidic, semi-digested meat at a perceived predator with surprising accuracy. This serves two purposes. It lightens their body weight so they can take off faster, and the foul-smelling, corrosive sludge usually disgusts whatever was trying to eat them. It is perhaps the most effective leave-me-alone signal in the animal kingdom. If you had the ability to vomit on demand to end a bad conversation, would you actually use it? These 50 rules prove that the thin line between a fun family outing and a national news story is held together by some very strange logic. Managing the wild in captivity is an impossible puzzle where every piece wants to either eat you, escape you, or simply ignore you. If you could live one day as any animal from this list, which one would you choose to experience life from their side of the glass? Drop your choice in the comments. Support the channel by hitting like and subscribing to ensure you never miss our next investigation into the bizarre.